God, I'm telling you, my dogs are barking today.
But man, my dogs are barking.
There's been many talented people covering Mississippi State over the years, many people with a lot of insight. But today's guest is someone that has been covering them for a minute now, but has been giving some really wonderful updates from Mississippi State's football's fall camp. And that is Justin Fromer from the Dispatch. And he is a reporter. He covers Mississippi State football. And he is joining us today. And Justin, we're so thankful to have you in today. And really, you're kind of the eyes for a lot of people that wish they could be where camp is and be able to kind of view it. You have a very unique point of view. I'd love to ask, who are some guys that you have been most impressed with so far? Who are a couple of the standout guys?
Yeah, so we've been able to watch about 15, 20 minutes at the end of practice for the past 4 days. Not a lot of time, but we get a little bit of 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 views. And just different days, different guys have stood out. Today specifically, I liked what I saw from Nathaniel Watson at linebacker. He got an interception off Will Rogers towards the end of practice. I liked what I saw from both J.P. Purvis and John Lewis at that Sam linebacker spot, which has been the big talk in fall camp about who sort of takes that position that was held by Tyrus Wheat the past couple of years and sort of joins that linebacker group with Buki Watson and Jet Johnson. The secondary has just been a huge question as well, just because so many people are gone from last year's starting group. And DeCarlos Nicholson has had a couple bright spots through the first couple of days of camp. Asai Spurge also has had a couple bright spots. Offensively, I like what I've seen from Geoquarius Spivey at tight end. Big body guy. He seems to have really good connection with Will Rogers already, and could provide somewhat of a matchup problem in the middle of Mississippi State's offense. Cree Whitmore, a younger freshman wide receiver, looks like a guy that at times could jump on the field and provide somewhat of a spark. And then obviously, speaking of a spark, Tulu Griffin has looked like the same guy he's been in his career at Mississippi State as an immediate big play threat. Anytime he gets the ball, no matter how close to the line of scrimmage he receives it, he's able to wiggle his way for extra yards. So those are the main guys that I think have really stood out for me, as well as some other guys who here and there may not be full-time starters, but look like guys that can contribute. Someone like Jeffrey Pittman in the running back room. Obviously Woody Marks is going to be the starter for this team, and that room is filled with guys who can contribute at times at fall. And Pittman, I feel like early in camp has made his claim that he could be involved at some point this fall.
Yeah, I'd love to know. We'll talk about the running back position first, then you touched on tight ends. Does it seem like Pittman is likely the number 2 running back to start on, or starting on August 2nd to be the number 2?
I think it's too early to say right now. I think it's still Kevon Lee, the Penn State transfer. I'd say he's the guy tabbed to be the number 2, and then sort of a 3A, 3B type scenario with Pittman and Simeon Price. But again, if it were me, just from what my eyes are telling me, I would say even Pittman has surpassed Price, just the fact of the plays he's making. And again, I wouldn't put too much stock into how much we're seeing of each of these guys, because we're only seeing them for 15 minutes of a 2-hour practice. So, but from the plays that I've seen, who's making more plays, I would put Pittman over Price.
And then you also touched on the tight end position. That is one that Mississippi State fans are really interested. It's been a minute since we've even had a tight end on the roster. And of course, when Mike Leach was hired, Spivey transferred out. He realized my position's about to go away. And now he comes back. He's a guy, would you say at this point, as people are kind of trying to figure out, A, who the tight ends on the team are, but B, who's going to be playing the most, does he seem like the guy that has the leg up so far on Ryland Goad and Antonio Harmon?
Yeah, I would say so, just from the fact that also experience-wise, I mean, obviously Ryland Goad has played on 2 national championship teams, but doesn't have a single catch in his career. Spivey was obviously also another one of those national championship game players who played for TCU last year, and so he has sort of that experience of being able to play this position right away for an SEC offense. One thing to go along with the tight ends that actually Zach Arnett mentioned today is that even though this position is back in the offense, it doesn't mean that Mississippi State is going to be set on using the tight end, all the time. It's more of in terms of what's, what the personnel best fits the offense. He mentioned today if he feels like at the end of fall camp that the Bulldogs will be more successful going in 10 personnel, which is a 1 running back, no tight end set, or even a 20 personnel with a 2 running back, no tight end set, then that's what they're going to go. So I think that's sort of one of the stories about this coaching staff that people aren't talking about, just assuming that because the air raid is gone, that everything is going to look completely different. No, I think this coaching staff is going to be very flexible in terms of what works and what they're going to try to find out what works for the next month before the season opener against Southeastern Louisiana. And again, just to go along with that, when we're about that flexibility, he mentioned with the defense too, and going back to that Sam linebacker spot, he said today that if a JP Purvis or a John Lewis don't stand out enough to them, then they'll just get rid of that position and bring a fourth defensive lineman in and move away from that 3-3-5 defense. So again, a lot of flexibility and a lot that this coaching staff has to find out about what they have.
Yeah, well, I love that you brought that up. That was actually going to be a question I had in a moment. I remember Arnett has brought up several times that bringing in Kevin Barbay, one of the things that impressed him off the bat when first meeting him, when he's asked what kind of offense would you run, is he would kind of think about what's my personnel look like. And so many fans are thinking, man, what in the world is this team going to look like? Are we just going to run the ball? We're not going to just be an air raid? What kind of mixture along the way? Does it seem like it's an offense, like formation-wise, that there's just many different formations that they're going off of, or are there a kind of key? Are we always in the shotgun under center? What does it look like?
Again, like I said, we haven't seen a lot. They met, or Cole Smith, who we talked to today, mentioned that in some formations they will go under center. The most of what we've seen, pretty much all that we've seen, has been a shotgun or a pistol look. But I wouldn't, just from what I've seen and from what my ears and eyes are telling me, is that I would not put a stamp on what this offense is going to look like. It's an offense that is going to run what is working. And if that means throwing the ball 50 times a game still, then that's what they're going to do. If the offensive line is dominating, they have the people up front and the running back room to do that. So I think it's one of those things where Kevin Barbay is going to be able to keep teams guessing because he's not married to a system.
Yeah, and I got to say, I would imagine from a fan's perspective, that is the best possible news they could have. I mean, thinking about only going with what works versus maybe just what the coach loved, because we know Mike Leach loved the air raid, and man, he was sticking to it no matter what, right? And so it's kind of neat to think about kind of changing based upon how things are going. When you look at this team, is there a particular is there buzz around any particular position group looking really good so far amongst everyone?
Yeah, again, I will stick with sort of that linebacker group. That's just where a lot of the focus has been, especially when you bring back the 2 leading tacklers in the SEC with Jet Johnson and Buki Watson. That's where a lot of people are going to gravitate. I think that group is going to be really good. And again, JP Purvis and John Lewis have been guys that have made plays in the when filling in for that first team role. You look at some of the backup guys in that group too, as Zachary Tillman and Nick Mitchell. Those guys have showed some promise as well. And I mean, there's younger guys in each of these other groups as well. And Isaac Smith out in the secondary has been talked about a lot, about a guy that could see the field at some point this fall, either in a defensive role or a special teams role. And then again, offensively, mentioned a guy like Creed Whitmore, a younger guy that can step in and should be able to help at some points this fall.
Yeah, and you talk about areas that are strengths on the team, like linebackers. Is there any team, maybe not concerned, but maybe let's say question mark? Is there a position group that you go, man, I don't know how this group is going to perform just yet?
Yeah, I'll go the secondary with that. That's something that Coach Arnett today talked about. Him being a safeties coach the past couple of years, said that that's a position that the defensive back, the secondary, is a position group that is keeping him up at night, because there's just a lot of unknowns of who's going to be filling in those roles. You look at the trajectory of college football these days; it's a lot of passing and a lot of passing downfield. And he mentioned today that's the easiest way of getting beat in this era of college football is big plays and explosive plays down the field. So when you're trying to integrate young defensive backs or inexperienced defensive backs, that's a position where guys have to learn very quickly. And so the more I think we see from that group in practice that there is some talent in this group, and that maybe they can play a guy like Marcus Banks, a Corey Ellington, a Sean Preston, who have some experience under their belt already and now getting some bigger roles. I think that will ease the coaching staff a little bit more heading into the season opener.
Yeah, and as we wrap up with these last couple of questions, you've mentioned several times that you've seen snapshots, and even though there's snapshots more than the regular average Joe would see, there's still so much to go, right? And that's kind of an important disclaimer. But obviously, you're not in Fayetteville, you're not in Oxford, you're not in you're not in Tuscaloosa. But to you, is this a team that is going to? You remember the media had their predictions saying that Mississippi State was going to finish last in the SEC West. And of course, we don't know what the other teams are looking like. They all might look remarkable and incredible. But does this come across as a team that's going to finish dead last in the West?
I don't think so. And I think just because the experience and age across the board of where, Mississippi State has players returning in key positions, I think is going to be really beneficial, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. When you bring back your 3-year starting quarterback, your starting running back, and 4 offensive linemen, that doesn't sound like a 5-7 group to me. Defensively, again, you bring back 2 of the top SEC or the top 2 SEC tacklers and 2 defensive line starters and Jaden Crum and Nathan Pickering. That doesn't sound like a 5-7 or whatever they picked. Whatever the media picked Mississippi State to go at media days, that doesn't sound like a group that's going to do that. I think, again, there's just so much unknowns, especially with the schedule when you have 4 away games that are really 50-50 in terms of what the other team is going to look like. That could change things by the time Mississippi State gets to those games. But on paper, it doesn't seem like a last place SEC West team to me.
Yeah, and I certainly want to encourage everybody out there to go read. Justin had an article today on the Dispatch, and he's a must follow for any Mississippi State athletics fan, just to kind of be in the know of kind of be up to whatever the current news is. But he had a great article. It's a 7-minute read. It's quick, but it's worth it. So please go check that out. Lastly, Justin, you do have a unique job. You have the ability to follow what many people say is one of their greatest hobbies, but you get to do it as a job. You get to do that and ride. And of course, there's important things that go into that. There's long hours and there's time by yourself riding things. But what would you say is your favorite part about what you get the privilege to do?
I'd have to be, wow, that's a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of rewarding things. I've always wanted to do this. I started off, for people that don't know me, I went to Michigan State University and I covered football for 4 years and basketball for 4 years. I covered a Final Four when I was there. I mean, I fell in love with sports and being able to do this when I was young and in college. Last year, I got to cover Notre Dame football at my last position, and now I'm in the SEC doing it at the highest level of the sport. So just being able to be firsthand at some of the best college football players and college football programs, and visiting campuses and historic stadiums. I've been to the Big House, the Horseshoe 4 times. Obviously Notre Dame Stadium. Alabama's not on the schedule this year, and of course LSU's at home. A road game not on the schedule this year, and LSU at home also. But the SEC venues that eventually looking forward to see down here in the South is something that I'm really, excited for. But in terms of the actual, aspects of the job, just being able to tell stories that people don't know. I did a story right before fall camp on Kevin Barbay's journey to Mississippi State, and just hearing, just quirks and aspects of what's gotten him here, about, throwing chairs and pounding tables in pregame speeches last year before Appalachian State beat Texas A&M. These are things people don't know or don't hear. Also found out in that story that although he's not very good at Madden, he's a very good Madden trash talker. So I think those are fun things you learn about people that, on the surface, it's just football with these guys, and it's really not. Each of these players and coaches have a journey and a story, and just hearing about them and what makes them tick and what, drives them to be here at Mississippi State and play at the highest level of college football is really cool to me.
Well, thanks so much to Justin Fromer for coming on, giving us some insight about what's going on in Mississippi State's fall camp. Thanks so much for listening to My Dogs Are Barking podcast. We'll see you next time.